He was just 13, a Sioux boy named Black Elk, also known by his native name, Ha-Ha-Kasapa, participated in the legendary 1876 Battle of Little Bighorn. During the skirmish, he proved his bravery by taking a soldier's scalp. As a close relative of Crazy Horse, a prominent war leader and his second cousin, Black Elk had an uncommon view of the conflicts unfolding. He saw firsthand the chaos and fury of the battle as Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho fighters overwhelmed Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer's 7th Cavalry. Black Elk's detailed memory of that day provides an exceptional perspective on a pivotal moment in the nation's past. No American soldiers survived the direct encounter with Custer, which ended swiftly in broad daylight. Crazy Horse had already pushed back General Crook's forces earlier that same day at the Rosebud battlefield. Some accounts claim that if Crazy Horse had gathered additional warriors from nearby encampments and launched an ambush at dawn, the cavalry might have been entirely annihilated, especially since the troops had rested in darkness after fighting at Rosebud. That same spring, during a frigid March morning known to the Sioux as the Moon of the Snowblind, Crazy Horse had turned away cavalrymen who attacked a village near the Powder River. From there, he made his way west toward Rosebud, defeating soldiers again before moving into the valley of the Greasy Grass, a sacred place his people wished to protect and preserve in peace. Just 2 days before the battle, Sioux families set up camp along the southern edge of the Greasy Grass Valley. By midday, an enormous village had formed, with teepees stretching so far they couldn't be counted. The Hunkpapas settled on the southern side and upriver, followed by the Aglolis, Minneconjous, Sanarks, Blackfeet, and Shahielis, with the Santas and Yanktonai to the far north. On the eastern side, the Greasy Grass River flowed, swollen from melting snow off the Bighorn Mountains, its banks lined with trees. From a nearby rise, one could gaze upon the mountains stretching to the west and south. On the far bank, rugged hills and bluffs carved by gullies stood tall. To the west, gentle hills offered both grazing land and natural protection for the countless ponies. A warrior named Rattling Hawk, injured at Rosebud with a wound to his hip, was treated by a healer called Harry Chin. The day before the battle, while Black Elk was preparing for a swim with friends, Harry Chin summoned him to Rattling Hawk's teepee to assist in a healing ritual. 5 boys, including Black Elk, were asked to become bears for the ceremony. Harry Chin's spiritual gift came from a dream involving a bear. He painted Black Elk's body and face with yellow pigment, marked his cheeks with black stripes, styled his hair to resemble bear ears, and placed eagle feathers on his head. As the ritual began, Black Elk recalled one of his own visions and suddenly felt like he was rising from the ground. In that instant, a deeper awareness took hold, one that could not be explained with words. He sensed that hardship was near, and a wave of anxiety swept over him. The other boys had been painted entirely in red, each crowned with actual bear ears. Wearing a full bear skin, Harry Chin began chanting sacred songs. At the teepee's entrance, ceremonial herbs were laid down. 2 women entered and took their places beside Rattling Hawk, one carrying a bowl of water, the other clutching a bundle of healing plants. Black Elk tried to look into the cup to see if it reflected the entire sky, as he once saw in a vision, but he couldn't tell. While Rattling Hawk received the offerings, Harry Chin continued his singing. A red cane was then passed to the injured warrior, and immediately he rose to his feet. Leaning on the staff, Rattling Hawk followed the 2 women outside. The boys, now dressed like little bears, danced around him, growling and mimicking bears as part of the ceremony. Brightly colored feathers stuck out from their mouths as they played their roles. After the ritual, Harry Chin crawled out on his hands and knees, moving so much like a bear that it startled Black Elk. Although Rattling Hawk wasn't strong enough to fight the next day, his condition had improved. Afterward, the boys walked to the river to wash off the ritual paint. When they returned, the village was alive with dance and storytelling as people recounted the brave acts from the Rosebud battle. As the sun began to set, the boys were tasked with bringing the horses closer to camp. By the time they completed the job, night had fallen, and the fires were still glowing as songs and celebrations continued. We wandered from group to group, soaking in the sounds and stories, until tiredness got the best of us, and we drifted off to sleep. At daybreak, my father woke me and asked me to help take our horses out to graze. While we worked, he had me attach a long rope to one of the animals so it would be easier to catch and lead the others back quickly in case something went wrong. He reminded me to stay sharp, keep my eyes open, and be ready to bring the horses back at once if anything unusual happened. Around midday, as the heat of the sun became unbearable, a few of us boys left the grazing grounds to cool off in the river. My cousin kindly stayed behind to watch the horses while we swam. As I rubbed grease on my skin in preparation for the water, a strange chill came over me, a creeping sense that something bad was approaching. Still, I went with the others toward the river bank. To the west, many villagers were digging wild turnips, and plenty of people were already in the water. While we swam, the horses came down for a drink, and the air remained hot and heavy. Suddenly we heard a voice call out from the Hung Papa camp, "The soldiers are here! They're charging!" The warning echoed from one end of the village to the other, reaching even the far-off northern camps of the Santas and Yanktonai. An Oglala crier repeated the alarm, his voice rising in urgency. Chaos broke out as people scrambled to get their horses, and we were fortunate ours were nearby. My older brother, riding a red sorrel, sped off toward the Hung Papa camp. I mounted a buckskin pony. My father, hearing my brother shout and noticing he had forgotten his pistol, rushed over and handed me both his revolver and my own six-shooter, a gift from my aunt. He told me to catch up to my brother and return his weapon to him. I mounted and galloped after him. Just beyond the Hung Papa camp, a thick cloud of dust was forming. Through it, I could see people running in every direction. The Hung Papas were in disarray, many of them still wet from the river. Then I saw the enemy. The soldiers burst through the haze on strong horses, tall in the saddle and firing their weapons. My brother called out for me to go back, pistol in hand. Nearby was a small wooded area where warriors were beginning to gather. He rode in that direction, and I followed. Women and children were already fleeing down the valley. Looking behind me, I saw them scattering up the hills. In the woods, more and more warriors joined us, and the soldiers began firing through the trees, the bullets snapping branches and shaking the leaves. The non-combatants continued their escape. Fighters streamed in on horseback. From where I stood, I couldn't see the village clearly. Dust hung in the air and everything was loud and disorienting. In the shelter of the trees near the Hung Papa camp, we called to one another, "Be strong, don't be afraid." I remember thinking that this was when the leader Gall convinced the Hung Papas not to retreat. I stayed hidden in the trees for a while, thinking about my vision. I felt then that our people were truly connected to the powers of thunder and that the army was bound to lose. Then we heard the cries, "Crazy Horse is here!" His arrival was announced with eagle-bone whistles and wild cries called hokahi, sounding like storm winds rolling in. From the north and west, dust rose up as Crazy Horse and his fighters surged into the valley. The valley turned into a swirling storm of dust, gunfire, and hoofbeats. All around me, shadows moved, men and horses rushing, shouting, shooting. On my left, I could hear the sound of army horses, their metal shoes clanging as they pulled back into the underbrush, chased by a storm of warriors. Eventually, the soldiers' horses burst from the thickets, and everything became a blur. I was suddenly caught in the middle of the action as warriors and soldiers moved upstream in a rush, shouting orders and warnings. It was impossible to tell who was who amid the chaos. In the confusion, I saw a Lakota warrior charge a soldier who held his ground. The warrior grabbed the reins of the soldier's horse, but the soldier shot him with a revolver. I was too small to push through the crowd to where the main fighting was happening, so I didn't get close enough to strike anyone. The fighting spilled into the river. Men and horses were tangled in the water, thrashing and struggling. The noise sounded like a hailstorm, with splashing and cries mixing in the spray. Once we got out of the water, I saw people removing the clothes from fallen soldiers and putting them on themselves. I noticed one wounded soldier still breathing on the ground. A nearby warrior turned to me and said, "Boy, go scalp him." I climbed off my horse and started the gruesome task, though the soldier's hair was cut short and my knife wasn't very sharp. He was gritting his teeth in pain, so I shot him in the forehead before finishing the scalp. Up ahead, some of our fighters were chasing more soldiers onto a hill beyond the river, while others stayed behind or moved downstream. From a hill near the Santee camp, I saw a thick haze rise as our warriors darted in and out like birds, gunshots cracking continuously. I decided to bring the scalp I had taken to my mother. On the way, I passed a group of warriors riding into the fight. Among them was a striking young woman who called out, "Be strong, brothers! Don't let them take me!" As I rode past the Oglala camp, I spotted Rattling Hawk sitting alone in his teepee, holding a gun and singing a sorrowful tune. "What can you do that I cannot?" he sang. I found my mother and the other women on a rise above the river. When she saw the scalp, she let out a special tremolo for me. The women were cheering and calling out to support the warriors across the water. I rested with them for a bit, watching the dusty hillside across the river. Horses without riders came charging out of the cloud. Other boys around my age had joined their mothers and sisters there, and they asked if I wanted to go back into the fight. We mounted our ponies and rode off together. As we neared the river, we saw gray horses without riders rushing into the water. We crossed the Greasy Grass and headed up a ravine that led into the bluffs where the battle continued. By the time we arrived, most of the enemy soldiers had already been killed. A few were still alive, groaning or trying to crawl away. More young boys had gathered by then, and we rode around firing arrows at the wounded. I saw one soldier pierced by several arrows. I tried to remove his coat, but an older warrior shoved me aside and claimed it. Then I noticed something glinting on his belt. I pulled off a shiny yellow object and hung it around my neck. It made a ticking sound at first, but later it stopped. I wore it for a long time before figuring out it was a watch, and eventually I learned how to make it tick again. Later we climbed to the top of a hill with the other women. There, dead soldiers and gray horses lay piled together. Our own fallen had mostly been carried away by then, but many of our people were injured or killed too. The thick dust made it hard to tell who was who. No one could say which of the soldiers was Pianchanska. I didn't see him. I did notice one soldier lifting his arms and groaning. I shot an arrow into his forehead, and his body twitched. Close by, some Lakotas were helping another man. I got nearer and saw it was Black Wasiku, Chase. In the morning's brother, he'd been hit in the right shoulder and the bullet lodged in his left hip. He had been falling off his horse when he was struck. Our people treated his wounds with medicine. He was my cousin, and both his father and mine were so enraged by his injuries that they killed a soldier and mutilated his corpse. The soldier was a large man, and though the meat looked tempting, no one ate it. A younger boy asked me to scalp a soldier for him. I did, and he proudly ran off to show it to his mother. While we were there, most of the remaining enemy troops were pushed back toward a hill where their mules had been kept. Eventually, I got tired of wandering through the battlefield. The smell of blood was overwhelming, and I no longer wanted to look around. A few of us returned to camp together. I didn't feel regret. I was content. The soldiers had come to destroy us and our homes, and this land was ours. When I was hidden in the brush with the hung papas and heard those first shots, I had a strong feeling that everything would turn out this way. I truly believed our people were connected to the thunder spirits I'd seen in my vision, and that the enemy was foolish for coming here. That night, no one in the village slept. The next morning, a group of warriors rode back to the hill where the last group of soldiers had taken cover, while the men who had watched overnight returned to the camp. My mother and I went along. She rode a mare with a foal following behind. We could see the army animals scattered on the hill, but the soldiers had built strong defenses around themselves. Near the western side of the Greasy Grass, at the foot of the hill, there were some thick bushes. A bigger boy named Round Fool was circling them. We asked what he was doing, and he told us a white soldier was hiding in the brush. He'd remained there all night after the rest had fallen back. We began firing arrows at the man, and it felt like hunting a rabbit. He scurried from side to side inside the bushes as we moved around, firing again and again. At one point, he cried out. Then someone set the grass on fire. As the flames rose, he bolted out. Our warriors chased him down and killed him. After that, we climbed the hill behind our men. We couldn't see the soldiers inside the fort, but we saw many of their dead horses and mules. We crossed the river again and were fired on by the soldiers, bullets splashing in the water. It was nearly nightfall when my mother and I galloped back to camp. Scouts brought word that more soldiers were headed in our direction, so we began to move. By sundown, we had packed up and started north along the Greasy Grass, headed toward Woodloose Creek in the Bighorn Mountains. We traveled all night. My younger brothers and I rode in a pony drag with some puppies. They kept jumping out, and I had to keep putting them back, which meant I got little rest. At sunrise, we reached a small dry stream where we made camp and ate a good meal. The meat had thick layers of fat. I still remember wishing I had more. By midday, we continued to Woodloose Creek at the base of the mountains and set up camp. There, a seriously wounded man named Three Bears began convulsing and kept repeating the word Janini. We never figured out what he meant. He died there, and we named the spot the camp where Janini died. That night, someone shouted, "Soldiers are coming!" and we rushed to look. But it turned out to be some of our own warriors joking, dressed in soldiers' clothing. Later, scouts confirmed no soldiers had followed us. That night, huge fires burned, and we danced in celebration of our victory. Thank you for listening to this account of the Battle of Little Bighorn and the 1876 Sioux War. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories from this channel.